The Great Depression was a time where the economy took a very drastic downturn. This was due to the stock market crashing, bad spending in the 20s, the banks giving out loans people couldn't possibly ever pay back, and inevitably, most banks went out of business because of this, and many lost all of their money that they had saved in these banks. Many businesses also shut down and put many out of jobs and in the streets. Unemployment in the U.S. rose up 25% during the Great Depression. Also, because of World War I, our ally companies that we traded with were in their own depressions and ceased trade with the U.S. During this, the Dust Bowl started in 1933 and didn't seem to end until 1939. This caused a famine, and it destroyed almost all the farming in the western U.S. World War II was also in its beginning stages by the end of the 30s.
Didn't have the things that we have today. We didn't have TV. All we had was regular kerosene, lights in some rooms of the house. Some had electric, some had kerosene lamps. We had wood burning stoves and kerosene burning stoves. And the food was good anyway. My grandmother was a great cook. By the way, my grandmother and grandfather brought my sister and I up after my mother passed away. And I was living with my grandmother and grandfather and two aunts and an uncle, and they were deaf. But they were very, very good to me. They have stamps for this and stamps for that.
You had to ration everything?
It was, yeah. It was really, really rough.
The 1950s greatly differ from the 1930s. Levittowns were built after World War II and were an alternative to the life lived in America previously. They were conventional and tightly spaced and were the image of a new and better America. The 1950s felt the shock of the Great Depression because the economic downfall was so great the U.S. economy struggled for several decades. The Korean War began in 1950 and also affected the economy. The 1950s also differed because it was the beginning of the Cold War and people were less focused on the spread of Nazism and more concerned on the spread of communism. This was the beginning of the space race, and the first satellite Sputnik started the space age. The 1950s also saw an increase in technology compared to technology used during the Great Depression. This led to a more advanced era and a more modern lifestyle.
They try to make sure that all of us had more than they did. So Nana would go to all these yard sales every week and pick up everything for the family. And even if you didn't need it, she thought you did. So she'd be so worried, and she'd be able to talk the people down from like 50 cents to a quarter, and she'd tell them how hard it was to be on Social Security. Would they take a quarter instead of 50 cents? And then she'd make sure that everybody in the family got what she bought at the yard sales.
Yard sales were Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh yeah. You learn by your parents, and you also do the same with your children in a lot of ways. You know, the saying, history repeats itself.
Our current generation is far more advanced and has greater technological advances. Some would say that our generation doesn't have the same moral responsibility and values that the older generations had. Our generation didn't go through as much of a struggle, so we don't work as hard as older generations when working at a young age was necessary. Current political views have also changed in regards to aspects like gay rights, abortion, and gun laws, which wouldn't be considered an issue at the time of our older generations. Technology is much more advanced and available to the younger generation, so it has led to newer generations becoming obsessed and attached to the internet and social media. People move so fast now because we have the technology to move faster, and we become impatient and lazy. We rely on our technology and have to push people to work harder. We have lost a lot of things the Great Depression warned us could happen, and the hard work and the drive people had in generations older.
Every Sunday we'd be at my grandmother's, Sunday was family day. But everybody's so busy today and so involved in everything, we didn't have, the children involved in all the stuff that they are today. And I think that they've kind of lost being together more. But yet, that's how it is today. Everything is so fast moving compared to what we had.
I think a big difference too is your generation certainly passed on to my generation, which I don't see so much in your generation, is there was no sense of entitlement. Nobody was entitled to anything. You had to work hard, you had to earn your own way.
Yeah.
Nobody was handing you things for nothing.
Right.
You didn't get a trophy for just being on the team. You had to earn it.
Exactly. And I mean, it was the same in the house, you know. Everybody lived in the house, everybody had chores to do, everybody had to pitch in and help. And today, the children, the parents are so busy too, with the children involved in sports or whatever, and the children aren't helping at home on their own. I mean, they would just automatically, they knew they had chores to do and they do them. And you're just so busy today with school and outside activities that it's easy to look and, oh, this is already done. And you don't even realize that it's being done for you every day until you have to start doing it more.
In conclusion, the Great Depression was an event that had great impact on the generation that experienced it. It had long-lasting effects on how the generation thought and functioned. When compared to the current generation, the older generation had more responsibility and knew the values of hard work that our generation has lost. The new generation has more technological advances and has a much different lifestyle than those of that generation. The long-lasting effects are that people are trying to work harder to create an easier lifestyle for the next generations, but in doing so, are actually pushing us to another depression of our own.